Hey there, guys. Thanks for dropping by, and a huge welcome to the Holy Shed, the littlest parish in Christendom, I do believe. And since we are a parish, let me begin with a brief parish notice, which is that for the first time since we began meeting this way in early 2020, the beginning of the first lockdown, I am going to have a holiday from the Holy Shed on the 9th and the 16th of July. Now, loads of you have been urging me to take a break for a long time now. So here we go. Me and my lovely missus are going to spend some time in Scotland, breathing in some Scottish fresh air, because we haven't been there for ages and we just had a bit of a fancy for it. So we'll take the opportunity to visit a couple of dear friends and faithful shedsters up that way while we're at it. And I just can't wait. So I'll obviously flag this up to you again before we get to that date. But just so as you know, on the 9th and the 16th, there will be no Holy Shed. Anyway, in the light of the King's coronation pledge to maintain the Reformed Protestant religion in this country, we have been thinking a bit over the past few weeks about reinventing God, right? Especially shifting away from that sort of sectarian God, which I think is reflected in that statement, our God, as opposed to theirs, and all that kind of stuff. So, this is what we're continuing to look at for today, at least, anyway. So, now and again, I see a book title which makes me think, oh my goodness, I wish I'd written that. I don't mean literally written that book. I mean, I don't even know what it says yet. What I mean is, I just wish I'd thought of that title. I love a good title, me. It's well, it's just the writing of the damn thing that's the problem. But I love the titles. Maybe, maybe I was thinking about this. Maybe I could write a book where all the chapter headings, right, are titles of books that I wish I'd written. Or actually, which titles were turned down by my publisher, which has happened on a couple of occasions. Who knows? Maybe a chapter would be all I'd need. I could compress all those books into single chapters. Why not? But then again, maybe all I'd need to do is publish the chapter titles if they're good enough. Now, there's an idea, a book that's just a really good contents page. Yeah, you like that? Anyway, one book title I immediately felt should be mine was this one: God is Not a Christian, Speaking Truth in Times of Crisis. I really, as soon as I saw that title, I thought, oh my goodness, I should have written that. But then, hey, Desmond Tutu got there first, so maybe I'll leave it there. He's rather big competition, So I'll leave that there so you can keep an eye on his smiling face. And the title of this book really does say it all. It's exactly what it says on the tin. God is clearly not a Christian, Desmond Tutu states. God's concern, he says, is for all his children, which, according to the Archbishop's book, includes women on an equal footing to men, people of all colours and ethnicities, black, white, brown, whatever, people of different faiths and none, the whole LGBTQ plus community, poor people as well as rich people, all are included because he affirms all are God's children. And, you can see his face there. When I read his book, I just kept on hearing his trademark chuckle from page to page. Such a glorious, beautiful sunshine man. And to underscore his point, Tutu relates one of my personal favourite Jewish stories, which says that soon after the episode in Exodus, where the Egyptians were drowned in the Red Sea, while the Israelites were all celebrating on the river shore the other side, God accosted them and demanded, "How can you rejoice when my children have drowned?" That's a great story, isn't it? It's a Jewish story. How can you rejoice when my children have drowned? Which echoes that passage from Amos 9, which I quoted last time, which says, "Are you not like the Cushites to me, O people of Israel, says the Lord? Did I not bring Israel up from the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Caphtor, and the Arameans from Ker? Which signifies, surely, as I said last time, that God has other people, other histories that he's a part of, other Exodus stories of hope and liberation. Wonderful, wonderful thought. Excuse me. To claim God exclusively for Christians, Desmond Tutu writes, is to make God far too small. Indeed, he says, it's blasphemous to think in that kind of way, because God is bigger than Christianity and cares about more than Christians. He has to, Tutu says, if only for the simple reason that Christians are quite late arrivals on the world scene. God has been around since even before creation, and that's a very long time. Nice one, Desmond, I say. I mean, look, human beings, latecomers to planet Earth indeed, evolved, we're told, around 200,000 years ago. So my question is, what was God up to for the first 198,000 years of human experience before Jesus turned up? I mean, that's a big, big chunk of human history, isn't it? Which is unaccounted for in most theology. And furthermore, what about the 6.5 billion years of Earth's history before even that happened, when there were no humans, but the Spirit breathed a myriad new species into life through the wonder of evolution? Now, that's a really big story, but I think we should stick to the human one for now. Ponder, would you, for a moment, those 198,000 years before Christ. And think about all those people, all God's children, too, Desmond Tutu would, I'm sure, affirm. Humans still evolving, learning about love and relationship and making families, learning about lighting fires and sitting around them, gazing into the night sky at the Milky Way, imagining how the whole thing began. People weaving marvelous myths and praying to the sun and moon because heavenly bodies represented the greatest realities that they knew. People creating rituals, developing laws and social structures to express their sense of what was right or wrong, creating religions. I'm talking about before any religion as such, let alone Christianity, appeared. Was God part of that story? Was God there guiding them, feeling their pain, holding them in love, rejoicing in their pleasures? Or was it a case of, sorry, shop's closed for another 100,000 odd years or whatever, come back later, we'll talk when Jesus arrives? Is that how it was? See, I think a theology worth its salt has to take all of this into account. Indeed, I think a decent theology needs to a perspective of 13.7 billion. I had to think there. It needs a perspective of 13.7 billion years, right back to the Big Bang. It has to encompass all aspects of the universe that we know about, and also this tiny, glimmering blue planet nestled in our corner of the galaxy, with all its creatures, from microbes to dinosaurs to great apes and early Homo sapiens, to developing civilizations, to peoples and cultures around the world, each with their own stories and histories of reaching toward and connecting with the mystery of life, each making sense of divinity through rituals and practices and beliefs, or through the lack of them. I can't believe it's good enough to have a theology simply of Christianity with, a bit of Judaism thrown in, which may suit some of us Christians. I can't believe that we scoot off to heaven while the fate of billions of other people and creatures is divinely inconsequential. I'm completely with Desmond Tutu. We need a theology big enough to encompass all of God's children, the whole earth family. Now, look, I am personally part of a magnificent sub-narrative, which perhaps unfortunately came to be known as Christianity. It's how I know God. I am a Christian. I know God through Jesus. But then, you see, I was born in a Christian country of believing parents who read and honoured Scripture, who introduced me to God's love made known in Jesus, the person who I experience as the human face of God. But what if that hadn't been the case? What if I'd been born in Afghanistan or Egypt or Indonesia or India? Wouldn't I then quite naturally pursue the great mystery that I call God in Islam or Buddhism, Hinduism or whatever? Or what if I'd been born into a family where the very notion of a God, in all honesty, appeared immature, illogical, unnecessary, and yet I nevertheless learned how to be a kind and loving human being? What then? You know, these are the sort of questions, believe it or not, that kept me awake even as a child. I remember lying in bed, pondering in my childlike way these things and thinking, why me? Why me? Why was I born here and now in this country, in this family? Why me and not others? And I thought of all those other little Daves around the globe born in different countries who never heard of Jesus or who just had a completely different story told to them. What about them? And do you know what? Don't anybody dare give me all that Calvinistic predestination stuff that essentially twisted God in heaven, decided who would hear and who wouldn't, who would enjoy eternal bliss and who would burn. I could say what I think about that, but it involves expletives. But seriously, excuse me, can my relationship to God and my eternal fate, as some would see it, possibly hinge on randomness of birth? Really? You know, it's the accidents of birth and geography that determine to a very large extent which faith or lack of it I belong to, Desmond Tutu says. The chances are very great, he continues, that if you were born in Pakistan, you'd be Muslim, or a Hindu if you happen to have been born in India, or a Shintoist if it was Japan, or a Christian if you were born in Italy. We should not therefore succumb too easily, he says, to the temptation to exclusiveness and dogmatic claims to a monopoly of the truth of our particular faith. After all, you, he says, could so easily have been an adherent of the faith that you are now denigrating, but for the fact that you were born here rather than there. And any sort of, response to that says, isn't God good, seems to me to be an utterly blasphemous thing to say, because all those other Daves and Pats and all those other people out there are all precious human beings, part of God's family too. And Desmond Tutu also warns, as I did in our last session, against really the more liberal tendency to insult the adherents of other faiths by suggesting that they're really Christians without knowing it, anonymous Christians. Remember me talking about that? I mean, that sounds generous on one level, but it's really patronizing. No, we must acknowledge them, other people of other faiths, for who they are, with all their integrity of heart and soul too. However, none of this discouraged Desmond Tutu from being an archbishop, from being a Christian, nor does it stop me from being, as I've often put it, a Jesus freak, a passionate follower of the way of Jesus. It's how, as I say, it's how I know God, through Jesus. But I can't possibly therefore say that others don't know or experience God by a different route. I can't say that. How can I possibly say that from my limited perspective? And I think that knowing what I do about God, knowing what Jesus teaches me about God, I have to believe that God is big enough to be part of their stories and their pathways too. Because otherwise it would mean writing off vast swathes of 200,000 years of humanity. As the good Desmond says, our God would be too small if he was not also the God of Gandhi. To which I would add, plus, God would be too small if God were not also the God of all those millions of ordinary, unnamed folk over the centuries and in the world now who have simply and do simply get on with life, mostly trying to be decent human beings in what we might call the image of God. Now, I'm not going to try, excuse me again, I'm not going to try here and now to identify and offer my take on all the Bible verses. Some people would be hurling at me if they were here right now. I mean, I'm happy to discuss that another time, but it's not what I want to talk about right now. Here and now, it's the prior question that interests me. Before you get to the Bible, before you get to all that stuff, it's a question which I think once we commit ourselves to a particular dogmatic position, we tend not to ask. We mostly refuse to ask or face up to the question, which is, taking into account the vastness of space and history and the diversity of human experience, can I possibly believe with intellectual and emotional integrity that one single religious community, mine as it happens, by the way, possesses the truth, that the God of the universe is revealed through just this one tradition and therefore ultimately rejects all the rest? That's a pretty big question to think about. And I think if you face it with any degree of intellectual and emotional integrity, then all exclusivisms and absolutisms just unravel, like a ball of wool around your feet. And once I say no, I can't believe that, as I say, then my certainties do just begin to unravel in that way. But not in a bad way. It's not a bad unraveling, because actually, and this is certainly my experience, I think it's liberating and invigorating to know that I don't need to defend the indefensible, that I don't have to try and find some obscure way to, an arcane way to explain what is really inexplicable. To know that, however big and great my concept of God is, it's a mere shaft of light compared with the blazing glory of the sun. This then, guys, I think is the greatest story seldom told. The 6.5 billion year history of planet Earth, God's 200,000 year history with humans, way, way, way before the New Testament was a twinkle in anybody's eye. The story of all God's children, now scattered across lands and cultures, across faiths and no visible faiths, each with their own histories, their own narratives and traditions of grappling with matters of meaning and ultimate concern, which I name God. But then what's in a name? And so I come back to my point that none of this deters me in any way whatsoever from my love for Jesus, who remains for me the human face of God, or indeed it doesn't deter me from a wholehearted pursuit of God within the framework of Christian faith primarily. To be a fervent adherent of Christianity, or indeed of any faith tradition, is not in itself provincialism, as we've been talking about it. No, it's particularity, which is a different thing altogether. Provincialism is when we refuse to step back and acknowledge the bigger picture, that the God we believe in and seek to honour cannot possibly belong to us or to our faith community, and at the same time also be God of the whole of creation. Such a God is far too small, too finite, too provincial. Fundamentalism, literalism, and absolutism of whatever tradition, and these things do exist in all traditions of religion and also in the world in general. But these things, any kind of fundamentalism, literalism, absolutism, claims to have exclusive access to truth and God. It's either this way, our way, or no way. It claims to worship the one true God, the one above all. But in the end, all absolutisms, all fundamentalisms turn out to be provincialisms, because God is always greater than any of our inflated assertions of divine truth and reality. Which is why I constantly insist that doubt and critical thinking are an essential part of faith, not faith's enemy. Don't let anybody tell you that doubt is the enemy of faith. It isn't. Certainty, I think, is the opposite of faith. Doubt, as I see it, is a necessary acid bath to purge naive assumptions, false religious pretensions, and all that unthinking conformity that many of us have been caught up with. The exclusion of doubt and critical reflection, that I think is the bad thing, which always leads us up some sad cul-de-sac or other. There's often an assumption in certain kinds of churches that people with doubts and questions, and especially those who drift away from the church or even from mainstream Christianity, are, backsliders. They are in some way spiritually substandard. They lack the grit or the piety to pursue the Christian faith. But the reality, I believe, is mostly the complete reverse. I think it is the doubters, the questioners, the people who have outgrown the hand-me-downs of religious certainty, but who still continue to search and long and look, to ask hard questions. These are the people, I think, who show the rest of us the way. Well, that's quite a barrow load, I know. Lots to think about. So we'll leave it there. If you have questions, do send them to me in Messenger on Facebook or by email to davetomlinson@mac.com. And I reckon I might have one more bite of this cherry next time at least. Maybe a couple, who knows. But for the time being, here is a prayer. Somehow, I don't think you are bothered what name we give you when we attempt to label the unlabelable. I suspect you have greater things on your divine mind, if mind is something even worth contemplating where you are concerned. Yahweh, Allah, Krishna, Waheguru, God, or the far shore, as Buddhists say. Words just don't hack it. You are the vivacious presence saturating all things with wonder. Landscapes, oceans and wild meadows, trees, croaking frogs, and the skylark's frivolous area of delight. May we find peace in knowing that you are indeed utterly ours and utterly everyone else's. The breath we share, the longing in our soul for goodness and love, the beauty, truth and wisdom we all aspire to know. You are the ultimate concern of all our best desire and yearning. You are God, beyond God. Amen. Okay, well, we're going to have a toast, and let me just explain. You may have noticed that I don't have my usual bottle on the shelf, and this is in response to a comment by someone this week on Facebook who is in recovery, and having listened to that and read it, I've decided to remove the bottle from the shelf and to repeat what I often do say, that whatever you have in your glass or mug is of no consequence, be it orange juice, wine, whiskey, tea, or a milkshake, whatever. The important thing is not the contents, but to celebrate life. That's what we try to do at this point in the shed. So here you go. Whatever's in your glass, whatever is going on in your life right now, however you or I may feel about the world with all its joy and turmoil, to life. L'chaim. So there it is, guys. If you like what I'm doing here in the shed, you can buy me a coffee. That'll do just fine, thank you. You just need to follow the link on your screen. It's also always at the top of the posts on the Facebook page. And we are deeply grateful to all of those of you who support us and help us in this way. And especially those of you who, have just, got it on a permanent register with Coffee. And I don't often get round to saying thank you to you, even though I respond to most people on the level when they do give us something. So thank you so much to all of you. It's much appreciated. And well, we're just about there now, really, except that on Monday, which is tomorrow, I am leading a soul space with our friends from Croydon, expanding compassion. This week, actually, beginning tomorrow, is Refugee Week. And so that's the underlying theme to this, that reaches out a bit beyond the specifics of it, and to think about having compassion, expanding compassion in our hearts. So I hope you can join me. That's at 7:00 tomorrow evening. I will certainly put up on Facebook tomorrow morning, probably, the link so that you can join the Zoom page with us, which would be fantastic. So that's just about it, really. Thank you so much for being here with me in the shed today. And it's nice and summery, isn't it? You can see, I'm a melon man now. I'm Melanie. I've got a melon shirt, which I bought from a charity shop. Very pleased with this. Enjoy the sunshine while it's here, and enjoy your week this week. Be kind to the world around about you, to people that you meet. Be kind to yourself, because I think the path of kindness is the path of expressing the God that is within us. And I'm going to finish, speaking of all of that, with a wonderful piece of music, a song and a video called Dear God by Nemo Patel, who I've played before in the shed. He's a wonderful man with a deep ecumenical heart. And so I hope you enjoy this, and I'll be seeing you soon. Okay? Bye.
Dear God, I found my way home, I found my way home, I found my way home. Dear God, I found my way home, I found my way home. Dear God, growing up I always prayed, said your name probably over 100 times a day. Never met you, couldn't see you, but had a lot of faith. Thank mom and dad for introducing us at a young age. As I grew a little older though, so did my mind. Curiosity turned to skepticism in due time. Began questioning all the rituals and little rhymes from the sacred books. They said you wrote each and every line. How could you? But they said you did, so you must have. Wasn't 100% sure, but in them I trusted. So I bowed, kneeled, sat in silence, and even read. Went to the temple and prayed every night before bed. Looking back now, I'm not really sure what prayer meant. I guess closing my eyes and doing what other people said, and asking for things like any other kid. Interest in the relationship that you and I had. Hold my hand, so I don't walk alone. Call your name, don't know where to go. I found my way, I found my way, I found my way home. And now I'm yours, okay? By the time I got to college, God, I prayed much less, except for before eating. Understandable, I guess. See, I wasn't clear from the start as to who you really were. Then I saw and heard so much fear, it all became a blur. I thought religion was supposed to be pure and not bad. And when I saw people use your name in vain, it made me sad. And that was just the start. Even worse was segregation. Temple, mosque, church, synagogues, and different congregations. They all spoke your gospel, even posted up your paintings. But behind your name, in the dark, they murdered and defamed. Instead of love, God, intolerance and greed has pervaded. Hollow in the marketing, but shallow in the faith. I was jaded, God, didn't really understand the reason how all your children in your name could dare commit treason. So I kept my distance and just prayed that one day you'd bring it all together in my heart and just explain. Hold my hand, so I don't walk alone. Call your name, don't know where to go. I found my way, I found my way, I found my way home. And now I'm yours, okay? When I hit 30, God, The clouds started to part, the answers started seeping in. I think you heard my call. You started showing up everywhere, not only when I'd fall, but every small blessing, I could start to feel it all. The love, the patience, the angel, the Satan, how we're all sinners who fall but get up to be saints. The humility, the grace, acceptance of all the change. Suddenly not being kind started to feel strange. You used to be a statue, but not anymore. I see you more outside those walls than inside those doors. Your mother nature, the sun, the water, and the dirt. My enemy, my best friend, what hits me at my core. Most of all, you're my teacher to be a better soul. Falling down, getting up, so every moment I can grow. You are in me, God. You are the deepest root. From darkness to light, you are my inner truth.
Hold my hand, so I don't walk alone. Call your name, don't know where to go. I found my way, I found my way, I found my way home. And now I'm yours, yeah.
Dear God, I found my way home. I found my way home. I found my way home. Dear God, I found my way home. I found my way home. Dear God, I found my way home. I found my way home. I found my way home. Dear God, I found my way home. I found my way home. Dear God. Dear God.
For me, this is my personal journey with God from childhood to now. From seeing God only inside those four walls to questioning God and religion.
I chant the mantra I've been chanting all my life, and I had no clue what it meant.
To eventually, in my own heart, realizing that God is everywhere, in everyone, in everything.
Freaking good, isn't it? Love it, love it, love it. Take care, guys. Stay human. See you soon.